Welcome to the Successful Nurse Coach podcast. On this podcast, Laura
and Shelby, both board-certified nurse coaches, show you how to make as much money as you want in private practice as a nurse coach.
Guys, welcome to the Successful Nurse Coach podcast. It is Laura here today doing a podcast, that I had the idea for just 20 minutes ago as I was driving home from dropping my kids off at school. And I was thinking about what it takes to win. And then, of course, the inevitable question is, well, what does it even mean to win? And I think a lot of this is stemming from a mentorship call that I had this week with a group that is ending this month. And I've closed enough groups over the years to know what this feels like for most of the participants in a business container. When you enroll into a business container, when you invest big in yourself and you spend a whole year with human beings, self-actualizing through deciding to become an entrepreneur, the end is bittersweet. And inevitably, there's these themes that come up of, I wish I would have used my time more wisely, or I'm trying to figure out what it's going to be like after I leave this. The answer is that everybody already kind of knows what they need to do. The real question becomes, how can I keep doing what I know I need to do without the support that I'm not going to have? And so that's really the question that needs to be answered. And we went into great detail of tactical answers and also of emotional answers and like tough truths to sit with. And so today's episode's all about how to win, what it takes to win as a nurse coach. And to fully immerse yourself in this episode, I think that for myself and for you, the listener, it would be helpful to define what winning means. And so when I was asked what winning means, it almost implies like this external thing that happens at some point. And for me, that's not it. For me, winning is a feeling, and it's a feeling of being in the right place at the right time. It's an awareness of myself in time and in space that regardless of the external circumstances, I'm finding deep meaning in the challenges that I'm facing. So I think if to really drill this down even further, maybe we could define what the opposite would be, which is losing. And losing in life, to me, feels like procrastination. It feels like resisting reality. It's wishing things were different or negative self-talk. Those states are losing states. They feel like you are losing. You feel like you are on the downhill slope of something. While winning feels like no matter how hard it is in that moment, you still feel like you're winning. You're aligned. You're in the right place at the right time, doing the right things, regardless of the external circumstances, headed in the right direction, whatever that means. And I guess from a holistic perspective, we could talk about winning in life versus winning as a nurse coach. But I think to win as a nurse coach, you have to be playing a winning game with your life in all of the areas. And so the misconceptions about winning is we think it's about external markers, or it's about money or status or validation. I think that winning is a state that we tap into courageously over and over again, in which all things worth having in life emanate from naturally. Let me say that again. I think that winning is tuning in to something deep within ourselves courageously and choosing it over and over and over again with deep trust. And from that place, all things worth having in life emanate. So if we can erase the concept of winning as crossing some imaginary finish line ahead of other people, winning is a deeply personal state that we are in. And the race, I think that we are all running in, if we're out of survival mode. I think winning first is getting out of survival mode, and then winning is really self-actualization. So it's your version of actualizing the highest potential within yourself and doing the things daily, weekly, monthly, yearly that participate in that endeavor. What I love about nurse coaching practices is they're the perfect playground to play this game. Like if you want to practice winning, start a business. If you want to practice winning, have a difficult goal. It's hard to practice winning when we're not being challenged. And so the antithesis of winning could be settling. I feel like the biggest barrier to winning for most human beings is fear. And I think that winning it as a nurse coach, we think it looks like 10K months or quitting our job or all these things, which by the way, happen eventually if you don't quit. But it's really who you become when things are very, very, very difficult and when nobody is looking. And that is out of the reach of your business coach. That is out of the reach of your personal coach. Yes, we're a part of our client stories, and me and Shelby are a part of a lot of your stories. But of course, winning is outside of the reach of all of that. It belongs uniquely to you. It is likely the games that you play in your head. It's the decisions that you make when nobody is looking. It's the first thought that you have in the morning and the last thought that you have before you go to bed. So today we're going to talk about ways to win as a nurse coach. And because it's easy to keep doing something if you perceive that you're winning, it's really difficult to keep doing something if you're always thinking that you're losing. And so this is the frame in which we see things. Okay, so I feel like at the Successful Nurse Coaches, in our business programs, we do things like challenges and gamification, which can be incredibly powerful and helpful. It's really helpful if it's at the right moment. It's really not helpful if it's not at the right moment. And you certainly could win a challenge, but I would rather see my clients win a challenge they have within themselves than to win a challenge that they're competing against others. Although competing against others can be helpful to then meet yourself in your own game that you want to win at. And so what I think it's hard to articulate, and I hear this over and over again, gosh, I remember you and Shelby telling us this, but I didn't realize it till now. I cannot tell you how many times I hear that. I hear that at the 7-month mark. I hear that at the 18-month mark. I hear that at the 3-month mark. Now, there is a perspective that you cannot have when you're beginning, and you're making decisions based on a very, very limited perspective. And there is a perspective that you have through experience that you can get no other way, that you hear mentors talk about. And one of those that we talk about over and over and over and over and over again is delayed gratification and thinking on a longer time horizon. I think it's really easy to jump into your business and this is what I did, when you say to yourself, I am going to quit my job in 6 months. I'm going to replace my income in 6 months. In 150 days, with a skill that I've barely learned and not having any experience in business, I am going to replace a career that took me 8 years to build. I'm going to do in 160 days what took me 8 years to do. It's so flippin' unreasonable. Oh, and I'm going to do that part-time outside of my full-time job that's 40 hours a week. Nuts. It's ridiculous. It is, you have a 1 in 1,000 chance of doing $100,000 in 6 months as a new nurse coach, I would say. So it's not impossible. And it's certainly, if you want to play that game, I don't mind that intention at all. I think that's fun. But if from a person who has more wisdom about what you're about to do, if the chances are about 1 in 1,000, if that's the game that you're playing, so you're going to win if you replace your income in 6 months, you are playing a losing game. And so then for 6 months, it'll be very clear as you creep up on that time horizon that you're going to lose. And it's very difficult to do difficult things when you feel like you're losing. It is very easy to keep going when you feel like you're winning. Change the game that you're playing. Change the way that you look at it. A game you can win that will feel good, that will give you more fuel in the tank to keep doing the things that will move the needle forward in your business, is giving yourself a year to become an excellent coach and to learn business. Say, this year in 2025, I am going to dedicate all of my time and energy that I have, that I can, to 2 skills the skill of being an excellent nurse coach and all of the skill sets that I know that I don't have to be a good business owner. And I'm going to give myself a year because guess what? I'm working full time and I have 2 kids and I'm a mom and I have aging parents and I have, right? Like, let's get realistic here. If you're going to play the game of coach your ass off, if you're going to play the game of serving as many human beings as possible, you're going to play the game of being a good student in the pursuit of these new skill sets. You're going to be in growth mindset. You're going to win. You're going to win even when you get 6 no's in a row. Because your frame will be, I got 6 no's in a row. That doesn't mean I'm a shitty coach and that I'm losing the game. I got 6 no's in a row. That means that I'm really putting myself out there, because 6 no's, I mean, if you hit black 6 times, you're going to hit red. And so I love changing the frame in which we play the game, because we like to play games that we are winning. We do not like to play games that we are losing. And so often with our goals, we set ourselves up to lose because it's a state of mind. Now, it is okay. I've had several of these lately. We've been talking about this in groups. Gosh, some of my clients have just been, the hits keep coming, right? It is okay to feel like you're losing one day and to wallow in it all, into feeling like a loser, into feeling like a failure. Like, I don't want you to not feel that. Just don't stay there. That's not the place that anything wonderful is going to emanate from. If you need to wallow in that once in a while, I think that's fine. I think that's natural. And perhaps even frame it like, today I am going to step outside the game and pretend like I'm losing. And I'm going to allow myself to feel all of the feelings that come with that. And then tomorrow I will change the rules and I will begin my pursuit of winning again. And it will feel different and it will feel good. We can do this with everything. We can win our diet. We can win with the way that we spend our money. We can win with the way that we choose to treat our children and to choose to treat our partners. We can win at the way that we choose to or not choose to engage with politics. We can change the game at any time. But human beings are designed to want to play games that they win, not games that they lose. So be very, very aware of what you're playing. And I also like the analogy of playing, because from a spiritual standpoint, that's kind of all that we're doing. Really. We're here for however many years, 75 to 100 years, if we're lucky. And on people's deathbeds, really, all that they wish that they had is more time with the people that they love. So while we're doing all these things, the day-to-day, all the stuff that consumes us, let's have fun. Let's set it up so that we can win at it and have some fun with it. And not that it's going to be easy. Okay. I have been preaching for a bit, so I'm going to get more practical here. What I see as big ways that new entrepreneurs and new nurse coaches feel like they're losing is by just breaking promises to themselves. And there is a version of you that doesn't do that. And I think that it's unrealistic to think that you can create a whole new way to earn money that gives you more freedom and more time without sacrifice. And so when I have watched nurse coaches over the years come to calls and be like, well, I was going to work on this, but I had to go do this. I had to go on this vacation, or I had to go do this thing. We worked on the backyard, or we decided to remodel our kitchen, or whatever. There's nothing wrong with that, enjoying your life. But to say yes to a future as an entrepreneur and to say yes to the future as a successful nurse coach, you're likely going to have to say no to some things that you want to do now. Can we just acknowledge that that's the reality? So let's not make it be in our head, say, I'm going to work on my business, 4 to 6 hours per week. I'm not going to give up anything. I'm not going to change my spending habits. And I'm going to expect that 4 to 6 weeks learning 2 new skills simultaneously to replace my income in 6 months. That's absurd. I think at this point in a perfect world, if you can work part-time and give your business 20 to 24 hours of undistracted hyper-focus, that's probably the best circumstances. I don't think 40 hours a week helps. I don't think going full-time in your private practice usually works unless you're independently wealthy and there's no pressure on you to make money. And in those cases, which I've seen, then people usually just spend a bunch of time wasting time. If you want to set your external circumstances to win as a new nurse coach, if you have this opportunity, work part-time and dedicate 20 hours per week. And do that for a year with no expectation of your business to feed you. Give your business that. Build your foundation there. There's a possibility it will feed you. It's a high possibility that it will within a year. But perhaps we get rid of the expectation that it should, or something's gone wrong. Perhaps we hold the intention or the hopefulness, but maybe we play the game of just becoming, of our own becoming, of who we're becoming. I have to do this so often. Sometimes I look back on different stages of my practice and this journey, and I think, God, you were an arrogant little twat. I have that thought. You were so arrogant. And I have other points that I look back on and I'm like, damn, what you did is extraordinary. And I think they're both equally useful. It's just so useful. It's very rare that I see new nurse coaches take what we say in these podcasts and what we say that we teach and we talk about. It's very rare that I see like a nurse coach take something like that and make it their reality without secretly pretending like it's not. And I'll give you an example. It is so often that I see that a nurse coach will say, I'm just coaching my ass off and I have no attachment to the outcome. And that's like, awesome. Two really good things. But then underneath it, when they're being really honest with themselves, they have all this attachment to the outcome and all these expectations on their business. And they are pissed that things aren't happening fast enough. If there is a way for you to find value in no's, for you to find value in trying something that doesn't work, for you to find value in doing something that you don't want to do every day for months, I think that's a really, really great intention. I think that winning takes consistency and long-term commitment. Nursing school for most of us was 2 to 3 years. That was difficult, right? For me, I lived at home. I moved. Nursing was my second career. Sold my car, bought a used car. I cleaned houses part-time and went to school full-time, nursing school. Moved in with my parents. I was 30. I'd just gone through a big breakup. I felt like the biggest loser in the world in some ways. And went to school 5 days a week, commuted an hour, and paid $100,000 in tuition to go to a private school so that I could get a good paying job when I was done. That was difficult. That was 2 years. It cost $100,000. It took all of my time, all of my energy. But we got a degree and we got this amazing career. And right, so like those 2 years, I'm still benefiting from those 2 years right now. Becoming a professional nurse coach or bringing nurse coaching to your organization or really deciding that you want to change the world through this modality, through this specialty, you know that you're called to it. Why would you think it doesn't deserve the same amount of time of study, of time under tension, of financial and time commitment? It cracks me up when people come out of their certification and then they're like, I can't get any paying clients. And they haven't invested in any education to teach them how. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. It's like graduating nursing school, sitting at home, and then wondering why all the hospitals aren't offering you roles. It's ridiculous. How can you set yourself up almost to not expect the worst, but expect that it's going to take longer than you want it to, that it's going to be harder than you ever imagined, and you can't wait to see who you're going to become through it all? If you can look at your practice from that perspective, you're going to feel like you're winning most days. Okay. Also, winning's not a single moment. It's like a pattern of decisions that you make over time. One of the best patterns that I've ever made is consistently investing in myself. like consistently investing in myself in a way that made me uncomfortable and made me low-key wonder if this was a cautionary tale. And I did this often, and I did this repetitively. And it is part of why we have what we have today. It's part of why I'm able to teach nurse coaches from all over the country, is because of who I became and investing in myself and being around people and mentors that have done things that I want to do, of normalizing what it's like to have things that you could only dream about. It's a pattern of decisions that you make over time. I decided to get up at 5 a.m. and work on writing Nurse Life Coach Academy for 7 months. For 7 months, I worked most days. I don't know how many days that is. And I'm not saying as a workaholic. I knew there was there was a means to the ends, but we had another business to run. I have a family, I have a farm, but it really only took 20 hours a week for 7 months. So let's see. 7 months is 7 times 4, 28 times 20, 500 hours. I put 500 hours in with no gratification, with only sacrifice, with a lot of frustration, with a lot of doubt, with a lot of uncertainty. But that's the result of something that now that I get to share that Shelby and I get to share with thousands and thousands and thousands of people. It was worthwhile. Can you give your private practice 500 hours? What if you worked 500 hours on your private practice and never earned $1? What then? Did you lose? Show me a nurse coach who works 500 hours on their private practice, doesn't quit without earning $1, and I'll show you somebody that can win at things that most of us can't comprehend. That's a totally different perspective. Show me a nurse coach that puts 500 hours towards something with no reward and no guarantee. And maybe even no support, and maybe even people in their life thinking that they're crazy. Now, it is highly unlikely, just as highly unlikely as it would be that 1 out of 1,000 are going to earn 6 figures in 6 months. It is highly, highly, highly unlikely. I have never seen it, that you'd put 500 hours and not earn $1. But what if you did? What if you put in 500 hours towards your private practice? That is building the skill of being a coach. That's coaching at least 100, 150 hours. That is learning everything that you need to learn about business. That is taking risks. That is doing things that make you cringe. That is doing things where nobody shows up. That's doing things that quote unquote fail. Show me somebody willing to do that for 500 hours without quitting, and I will show you an 8-figure earner, or somebody who affects thousands and thousands of people. That is so badass. That is a beautiful game to play. That is a great game to play. And it's so different than you think, right? Because you think of okay, I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to do this. I'm going to set up my office, and it's going to be great. And then you do 3 Facebook posts, and nobody reaches out to you to schedule a coaching call, and you think something's gone wrong. If we can change the frame in which you see it, it's so much easier to do this with support, you guys, which is why we're in business, which is why we've been doing this podcast weekly for 3.5 years. It's so much easier to put yourself in the right mindset to play the game that needs to be played for you to really win, because there is something you're likely going to get reward along the way as a signpost to keep going. But what if you committed to playing the game with none? Then everything is just beyond your expectation. And then your point of view is, oh my gosh, I have been working on my practice for 500 hours. And can you believe it? I have made $20,000 that I didn't think that I was going to make in my first year. $20,000 more learning something that is the skill set that is the way that I'm going to serve the world for the rest of my life. That's a really, really good outcome. But while you're in that, if you don't have that perspective, you feel like week after week, you're losing. And that's hard to do. Okay. So there's a word, aggressive patience. It's such an interesting word, right? Aggressive patience. It's like there's a part of you that's like balls to the wall. I'm going to make this happen. I'm going to do this. Like nobody's going to stop me. Laura, I'm not even afraid to say that I want to be a multiple six-figure earner. I want to speak on stages and I want to be a TED Talk nurse coach. I want to write a book, all these big things. Yes. Yay. I love it. I want to hear more. Let's talk about it as long as you want to talk about it. It's aggressive. It's awesome. It's got potency to it. It's contagious. And it's certainly how a lot of business coaches sell their programs. And so I'm not against that. It is useful. I want to hear it. I love when I hear it. I will get on board with you because that's where it starts. Okay. But aggressive patience is coming to coaching calls for 3 months straight without one single paid client and not crumbling. Of like, when given the choice of like to trust the process or to blame the process, you choose to trust. That's aggressive patience. That takes resilience, it takes adaptability, it takes sacrifice, it takes commitment, and it is who you become in the process of choosing that path is worthwhile, even if you ended up doing something different professionally. Entrepreneurship is a healing modality. It is the perfect playground for self-actualization. It will meet you wherever you are. It is the most honest friend you can have. It will not lie to you. And the biggest mental blocks that stop us from winning is this fear of failure, fear of judgment, fear of self-doubt. My husband and I just celebrated our 11-year anniversary. And I think I've talked about this in social media and stuff. And I am not exactly sure when this is going to go live, but I'll spill the beans on what's been happening in our family. So we have rental properties. We have several rental properties. And 2 years ago, we bought our dream farm. And our dream alpaca farm, it was a difficult deal to get done. The original sales price of the property was insane. It was 7 figures over what we could afford, just to put things into context. But everything just kept happening. We knew we needed to be here. There were so many like spiritual moments that we knew we just needed to buy this farm. I'd always wanted an alpaca farm. I just didn't know it was going to be that year that I got the opportunity to buy one 5 minutes down from our house. And the owner who was selling the farm, I loved her. We're still very close today. And so we got this deal done. And we got this deal done without selling our primary residence by renting it out and moving some money around and creative financing. It was a Hail Mary, but we got it done. And then we paid the owner, not only we pay our insane mortgage, but we paid the owner off over about a 9-month period of time. And it was great. And we were able to do it and we loved it here. And we had rented our primary residence for a year. And then we decided it was time to do some renovations on the house. It needed some foundation work. The heater went out, the oven went out. We had a flood. We needed new windows. It's an old farmhouse. And kind of everything, shit hit the fan. And so we're kind of hemorrhaging money on this house. And all the while we're hemorrhaging money on this house, we are birthing Nurse Life Coach Academy, and we are reinvesting all of our profit into Nurse Life Coach Academy. So I had expenses X and income go down by 2X over a 7 or 8 month period of time. That's not unusual in life. Things like this happen. So we said, it's been a year with our tenants in the house. We're going to sell the house. Put the house on the market. Market looked great. Interest rates had just come down. Y'all, my house has been on the market for 5 months. We have dropped the price of the house by $70,000. We had only one offer, a cash offer of an out-of-state buyer. 3 days after we accepted the cash offer, we're doing closing paperwork. We're going to do like a 15-day close. The poor buyer had a heart attack and died. And the house fell out. And these are the kinds of things that we have been up against as a family. And it's like the hits just keep on coming. And thank God for all of the coaching, for all of the wisdom that I have and expanding my time horizon in thinking, worst case scenario, we lose the farm. We have to sell the farm for a big loss. And I move in with my parents. that's like the worst case scenario. But I would still feel like I was winning because I didn't let fear stop me from making choices that were scary. And the likelihood of that happening is so low because of who I have become. And I sleep well every night, despite it all. And I know that if I keep moving forward and making the best choices that I can using the skills that I've created, focusing on service, focusing on gratitude, this will be a wonderful story I get to tell. Like I'm telling right now. I'm in the middle of it. I am not on the other side of this, you guys. Our tax strategist made a mistake. I'm like, oh, sorry. You don't owe 7,000, you owe 50. That happened 2 weeks ago. I'm in the middle of the bad part of the story, but I already have perspective of the story that's useful. That is winning at life. Like that is in my opinion, that is winning at life. And so my husband and I were having this conversation. I said, babe, in my lowest moments, the parts that I don't tell you about, I have the thought of, oh my gosh, I was an arrogant prick. We were doing so good in business and so good in our real estate. Everything looked good. And we took this big risk and bought this dream property. And now we've got all these damn animals that we take care of. And it's kind of ridiculous. And had we just saved and stayed safe, we wouldn't be in this position. And I'm the one who drove it. How irresponsible am I? I went bankrupt in my early 20s. So it's like probably some version of hers. Like, see, you did it again. And now you put your whole family at risk. So in my deepest, darkest moments, that comes up. That is not me. And it's just not true. But he said, thank you so much for sharing that. Because in my deepest, darkest moments, I blame you. So we were both thinking the same thing because he's a saver. And then he goes, but then that's not true. Because like who we're becoming by going for it and like what it requires us to do and the decisions that we need to make and how creative we need to become, that's where the gold is. So like, why would we ever change? Why would we ever have second guess the choices that we've made that are putting us under pressure to become something more? Because the outcome, like the external circumstance, like whatever ends up happening with us, whatever ends up happening is just going to be part of the story, the winning story. I just don't know what part of the story we're in. You know what I mean? And so for you guys, a lot of times you don't know what part of the story you're in. But those deep, dark feelings and thoughts that you have about failure, about not being good enough, about how, yeah, Laura, you can do this because of you, blah, blah, blah. I can't because of blah, blah, blah. Like, as long as you have the courage to share those with a mentor or with a colleague, you can pretty much work with that. It's when we don't speak those out loud and they become the rules of the game that we play in life that feels like we're losing, feels like we're stuck. So I'm going to give you just a few things because I think we're going long here. Yep, Laura's been talking at you for 36 minutes. Gotta love that. You gotta love that I had a thought 20 minutes ago and probably 1,000 of you are going to listen to me and my voice this morning, and my hopes is that you find some value in it. And so I want to leave you with some tactical steps when you're feeling stuck. And I think the first thing is defining what winning feels like for you. Define what winning feels like. Write that down. And then when you're making decisions, only make decisions from that place. Do not make decisions from the place that you feel like you're losing. Everything worth having will emanate from the state of being, of feeling like you're winning. And you can create a frame regardless of your circumstances. Let's take one more example. What's the worst thing imaginable that you could ever experience as a human being? I know a lot of mothers listen to this, so I'm going to go with the mother's worst, absolute worst nightmare. The worst nightmare of every mother is losing a child. For a lot of you who don't have children, maybe the worst nightmare that you could ever imagine is losing your partner, losing a parent, losing a friend. But it's likely losing somebody that you love. There's a book called There's a Spiritual Solution to Every Problem by Wayne Dyer. And that book gives you a framework to win in the unthinkable in ways that you can't. There's no mindset work that can really be done. And from that perspective, if we come to earth to learn, we chose to be here for a reason, that any external circumstance that we experience has purpose. I want you to think about stories of parents who have lost children, unimaginable, like lost children in kidnappings, lost children to murder. And you see them years later and they're advocates and they're leading deeply meaningful lives, full of grief, but also full of joy. Somehow they chose to win in the unimaginable. And that just shows you of the capacity of the human being. And so while that's an extreme example, I want you to take that example as an extreme, but in your current circumstances right now, what would it feel like to win? And what decisions can emanate from that place? Okay. This is one of my most raw podcast episodes that I've ever done, but I feel really, really passionate about giving you all permission to win. It's worth it. It's worthwhile. And if you want to be a nurse life coach, if you want to be a professional coach, you learning how to win personally and professionally helps other people learn to win personally and professionally. Or it's kind of like what that's kind of our line of business. People might say, what do you do for a living? I help people win life. That pretty much encompasses it. And that can be your what do you do statement. You can borrow that until you get a niche. I help people win at life. I help people wake up every single day with absolute confidence they're in the right place, doing the right thing in the right way, headed towards the right destination. That's what I do for a living. What else is more, like everything else is not important if you can wake up feeling like you're winning. All right, go win. Enjoy your day. If you have any bone to pick with me, comments, anything, please reach out to me. We would love to hear. I love to know that you guys are listening and that you're finding this useful, and have a blessed, wonderful day. Bye, guys.